Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about sets and reps, okay? In the previous video, we talked about exercise selection and how to build out a 3-day-a-week program and why I prefer 3-day-a-week programs over different kind of split routines. So now we're going to talk about how to assign sets and reps to those exercises, all right? And there's really 3 rep schemes that I like to implement throughout the week, all right? Now, these rep schemes came rooted in West Side Barbell and Louis Simmons, okay? And Louis got a lot of his concepts from the Soviet training methods, and the Soviets were really the godfathers of strength and conditioning. Now, I first learned how to implement these for athletic teams at East Carolina football with Jeff Connors, and we followed a very similar system over 4 days a week, right? Now, I've just modified that to work over 3 days, which I find to be more productive for especially youth athletes with all the demands on their schedule. So the 3 different rep schemes are repeat method, max effort method, and dynamic effort method, okay? And all 3 are critical for the development of a youth athlete. All right, so let's walk through each one of them and how we're going to use them throughout the week. So the first one, repeat effort method. All right, and the way we will abbreviate that is RE. So repeat effort method. Right, so the repeat effort, this is higher repetition, stuff that we're most exposed to when you start strength training, and it's hypertrophy training. And a lot of the research in long-term athletic development tells us that this is where a lot of the foundation has to be laid for strength to be built on top of that, and then power finally to be built on top of strength. So with our entry-level program, we like to focus a lot on the repeat effort method. So the 3 rep schemes I like out of repeat effort is 3 sets of 12, okay, 3 sets of 10, and 3 sets of 8. So roughly between 12 and 8 reps is kind of our range for repeat effort. Now, of course, you could go a little bit higher, but I don't think you can go lower than 8 reps and really be working on hypertrophy. So this is where we like to spend our time. The other thing is it gives the kids a lot of practice. Just like working on your jump shot or your baseball swing or whatever it is, you need a lot of practice. So by exposing them to high repetitions at relatively low loads, less weight in their hands, they're able to practice these movements and get them right. So the challenge here is, just like a bodybuilder, is full range of motion, mind-muscle connection, and really learning how to do the movements properly in this rep ranges. So after we kind of get a foundation of that, right, then our level 2 program incorporates repeat effort method and max effort method. Now, max effort training can sound really intense, okay, and sometimes it is, but ultimately max effort training is traditional strength training. Now, this is where my 8-5-3 method comes in, which I recently wrote an ebook manual on and have done some webinars and podcasts around because it's been really successful for us. So our max effort, ME, max effort training cycle, okay, looks something like this. We'll do 4 sets of 8, okay, for 3 weeks, and our last set will be 75%, okay? So we'll work up to an at 75%. Now, in your last set, you're trying to do as many reps as you can, and then we constantly update the 1 rep max, right? But we'll get into a little auto regulation probably in a different video and focus mainly on rep schemes here. So following that, the next phase of our program, all right, would be 4 sets of 5. Okay, our top set at 85%. Okay, so 5 sets of 5 is like one of the most foundational rep schemes in the history of strength conditioning. We've modified a little bit to 4 sets of 5, but it's the same principles, okay? And again, we're trying to update our working max constantly, and we live in that for 3 weeks, okay? So at the end of 3 weeks, we then go to our heaviest phase of the year, 4 sets of 3. Okay, and our top set is at 90%. Right? So that's our heaviest phase, all right? And we're really learning and stressing the central nervous system in that last 3 weeks there, okay? So again, just to zoom out here for a second, we've got repeat effort and max effort, right? And we're gonna follow these rep schemes for 3 weeks, okay? 3-week mini cycles is what I call them, all right? So this would be week 1 through 3. This would be week 3 through 6. And this would be week 6 through 9. Okay? So each one for 3 weeks. All right, now the last rep scheme that we're going to hit on is dynamic effort method. Okay, now dynamic effort method takes a little bit of learning from the athlete because it's a little bit different stimulus than repeat and max effort training. So dynamic effort training is about moving a light implement as fast as possible. Okay, so when we think about the force equation, right? Force equals mass times acceleration. Okay, what we've been doing here, right, is as the mass goes up, the acceleration will go down. You know, think about that last 1 rep max that moved really, really slow, right? So we're increasing the force, right? But we're manipulating really mass going up, acceleration going down as the weeks progress. When we talk about dynamic effort method, we're going to flip that, right? So as the mass decreases, the acceleration will increase and then producing force in a different way. All right, so let's take a look at our dynamic effort sets and reps. Okay, DE, dynamic effort, and we're going to reverse cycle our dynamic effort programming. So what that means is you can see here the total volume is going up, the total volume is going down, right, as the weeks go up. And the reason I misspeak is because with dynamic effort, okay, we're going to reverse cycle that, so we're doing more reps as the weeks go on. All right, so take a look at this. We'll start out with 3 sets of 3. Right, our heaviest dynamic effort cycle. Okay, we'll then move into 3 sets of 4 and finish with 3 sets of 5. Right, as the reps go up, the load goes down. Right? And we're starting to move that faster. Now, instead of using a percentage of a 1 rep max, a projected 1 rep max, like traditional strength training, right? We like to use velocity-based training for our dynamic effort. So what that means is we're tracking the speed that the bar moves in meters per second and letting the speed dictate the weight. Okay, so when we're talking 3 sets of 3, right, we like to be in a speed range of 0.75 meters per second to 0.95 meters per second. All right, so we got 0.75 to 0.95. Okay, that is our range for 3 sets of 3. All right, now when we move 3 sets of 4, we go 0.95 to 1.0. All right, and then in our last phase, our fastest phase, we like to be 1.0 to 1.5. Okay, so that's how we're going to reverse cycle our dynamic effort. And what you like to see here is a little bit of post-activation potentiation. So what post-activation potentiation is really the same concept you see a baseball player using when they swing 2 baseball bats or maybe put a donut on a bat, making it heavier. And they take the donut off and the bat immediately flies faster. We can apply that same concept to the human body, right? So by the time we're down here, okay, in our weeks 6 through 9, okay, our last phase of the 9-week program, right? We should really feel like we're moving fast. And this contrast here between 4 sets of 3 and 3 sets of 5 can be really, really nice to prime the athlete. That's why I love the 9-week cycle, because a lot of times this is postseason time, this is tournament time, and this is a perfect place to do some lower volume here and some higher volume here. Okay, so again, that's a look at how we do all 3 rep schemes, right? All moving together, all working for each other. Okay, now let's erase our physics equation here and use the bottom part of the board to look about how we assign this throughout the week, right? How do we touch everything we need to throughout only 3 training days, right? And then, like I said earlier, this was a challenge for me when I was building the program. So this is kind of where we've gotten to. So we're gonna look at a Monday, Wednesday, Friday program. Now remember, 3 days a week, it doesn't have to be Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It's really a day 1, a day 2, and a day 3. But in our program, we basically train Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So just for clarity's sake, that's how we'll write it. So we'll go Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Okay? Now we know that my base 4 exercises is a double leg movement, a single leg movement, upper body push, upper body pull. Okay, so we'll stay with that. And now remember, you build the program around that. Sport-specific exercises, individual correctives, accessory work, and so on. But that's the core of it, is those 4 movements. So we'll go double leg, single leg, push, and pull on Monday. So what we like to do on Monday, all right, is we like to squat heavy on our Mondays. Okay, Monday is typically our squat day. So we go max effort double leg. Okay, we'll go repeat effort single leg. Okay, we'll go dynamic effort push, and then a repeat effort pull. Right? So that really sets the path for the rest of our week, because what we're going to do throughout the week is try to balance that so that we hit everything throughout the week. We've got 3 rep schemes, we've got 3 days, so we just need everything to become evened out by Friday. Okay, so now let's look at Wednesday. We're going to operate with the same template: double leg, single leg, push, pull. Okay, so we did a max effort double leg exercise on Monday. For us, it's a squat day. Okay, so on Wednesday, I really like to do a dynamic effort exercise on the Wednesday. Okay, so dynamic effort. Okay, think something like a trap bar jump as an example. Okay, then we'll go single leg. So we had our repeat effort. So why don't we go max effort single leg? Okay, max effort single leg. We had a dynamic effort push, right? So why don't we go repeat effort push here? Right? Repeat effort push. Now we had a repeat effort pull. So why don't we do dynamic effort pull on the last exercise on Wednesday? Okay, a dynamic effort pull in our book is a lot of med ball work, okay, med ball slams. With javelin throwers, I did a lot of great pullover work. Now you have to build up to that, but you can be creative about your exercise menu where we talk about dynamic effort pulls. So now the last day of the week, okay, we still have our 4 main exercises, all right? We need to make sure we check these last boxes so we hit everything throughout the week. All right, so our last example here, double leg, single leg, push, and pull, okay? So let's follow across the top. We did a max effort on Monday, a dynamic effort on Wednesday. It's time for a repeat effort double leg exercise on Friday. Nice day to do repeat effort, because now in theory you have the whole weekend to recover from maybe some lower body soreness from following these rep schemes at the end of the week. Single leg, so again, we've hit repeat, we've hit max effort, so now it's time for a dynamic effort single leg. Again, you can be creative with your exercise selection. This could be single leg broad jumps, single leg box jumps, lateral jumps. You could do overhead single leg med ball throws. You can be really creative with your exercise selection with dynamic effort exercises. So we did, now let's move on to push. Okay, we've had our dynamic effort day, our repeat effort day. So now it's time for our max effort push day. I'd say in almost every program in the country, that's going to be a bench day. Okay, max effort push, that is translation for barbell bench press. All right, and now let's look pull, last exercise of the week. Okay, we've done repeat effort, dynamic effort, so it'd be a max effort pulling day. Okay, now max effort pulls, what I've really liked to use for our max effort pulling program is weighted pull-ups, or unweighted or assisted. Pull-ups are really, really hard, or chin-ups, either variation. Both are really challenging for people to do, right? Especially, females have a real challenge with pull-ups and chin-ups. So what I like to do is I like to use our max effort rep scheme here. 4 sets of 8 might be assisted with a band or however you want to do assisted pull-ups, okay? Maybe by 5s you have a less resistance. So if you go down band strength, for example, and then by 4 sets of 3, you're doing pull-ups, okay? You've built the strength over the time to be able to do full rep pull-ups. Now with our higher, our strongest populations, these become weighted pull-ups, right? So by the 4 sets of 3, right, you might have a chain with 45-pound plate or maybe more hanging around you doing 4 sets of 3. And the range of motion and the strength development from weighted pull-ups is really, really powerful, especially with youth athletes. So anyway, just a little exercise prescription, how you guys can be creative. And we've applied max effort rep schemes to a ton of different exercises. And it really fits your population and your facility and how all this moves together. So that's kind of a look how we use the repeat, max effort, and dynamic effort throughout the week. And you can assign different rep schemes to different body parts, different movement patterns, really, throughout the week, and check it all off using a 3-day-a-week program. So just to box this off for you, okay, that is kind of how the week would flow. And then, of course, you're just assigning exercises like we talked about in the 3-day-a-week program video, is you're assigning exercises based on the level of the group, the layout of your facility, and so on. So that's a look at how we program from a sets and reps standpoint, and how it's worked for us. So I hope that's helpful when you're writing your own programs. And I hope to dive in a little bit deeper in some future videos about exercise selection, auto-regulation, and then really that post-activation concept that we talked about. All right, I hope that helped. Talk to you soon.